Okay, imagine a world where the true capabilities of a child's mind were just completely misunderstood. A world where students were basically viewed as empty vessels, right? Just waiting to be filled up by the heavy hand of a demanding teacher. Well, in this explainer, we're tracing a revolutionary evolution in early childhood education. It's a journey that started with a radical shift in perspective, one that absolutely changed how the world views the independence, the capabilities, and frankly, the soul of a child.
But before we start mapping out today's modern educational philosophies, we really need to ground ourselves in this incredible primary artifact. This is the 1948 revised edition of Maria Montessori's foundational book, The Discovery of the Child. And what's so striking here is that it was printed by Kalakshetra in Madras, India. It's this amazing physical testament to how deeply her influence had already taken root, literally stretching thousands of miles away from her home in Italy.
So, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The global education phenomenon. 2. A revealing environment. 3. Education as an aid. And 4. Comparing Montessori, Reggio, and IB. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The global education phenomenon.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Montessori actually documented this absolute explosion of interest in her own introduction. Her methods were being rapidly translated into dozens of languages and adopted across completely different continents. Imagine realizing, almost overnight, that you haven't just created a new curriculum for your local neighborhood, but you've sparked an unprecedented global awakening. Suddenly, people everywhere were seeing children in an entirely new light.
And the sheer diversity is just staggering. I mean, we're talking immediate, widespread translations into German, French, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, you name it. Training centers were springing up in Australia and New Zealand. Schools were being founded all the way from Canada down to Latin America. And perhaps the most impressive part, in an era that was often defined by deep divisions, her methods were embraced by wildly diverse groups: Christians, Hindus, Catholics, Protestants, and even political radicals. This wasn't just some niche European trend. It was a completely borderless movement.
So, Montessori realized something absolutely profound about this massive wave of adoption. People from entirely different backgrounds were finding exactly what they were looking for. Why? Well, because her framework successfully bypassed those surface-level cultural differences. It tapped directly into the fundamental, universal needs of the human soul. It wasn't about imposing a specific culture onto a child. It was about unlocking what was already universally human right there inside them.
Which brings us to Section 2, a revealing environment.
So what exactly kind of physical and psychological space allowed these universal needs to surface? Montessori coined this brilliant term, the revealing environment. Now think about the traditional classrooms a lot of us grew up in. Often the whole goal was for the teacher to mold the student, right? Kind of like a sculptor forcefully shaping a block of clay. Well, the revealing environment does the exact opposite. It's deliberately created to meet a child's inner needs, leaving them completely free to express themselves. Instead of treating the child like clay, it's more like treating the environment as a fertile garden. The adult just provides the exact nutrients, sunlight, and space needed, and the seed blooms completely on its own.
And this was a huge departure from the science of her day. Back then, experimental psychology was kind of obsessed with measuring these quick, instantaneous reactions to material stimuli for just a few short seconds, and the whole thing was entirely dictated by the adult experimenter's will, basically prodding the child to see what happens. But the Montessori method? It flipped the script entirely. It focused instead on enduring transformations. The activity is freely chosen by the child and is guided by the inner dictates of life. We're talking a massive paradigm shift from testing quick reactions to fostering continuous, dynamic personal growth.
Using her medical and scientific background, she wasn't just teaching kids the alphabet. Through rigorous observation, she was literally unearthing hidden human values and this immense potential that rigid, traditional schooling had been actively suppressing for centuries. By just stepping back and letting the environment do the work, the true nature of the child was finally revealed.
Section 3. Education as an aid.
This profound realization meant completely rethinking what education even is. I mean, if the child is capable of revealing their own potential, then we can't view education as an adult manufacturing a student anymore. Montessori conceptualized education as an aid to life. The adult is really just preparing the optimal conditions for the child's self-construction. You aren't building the child, you're setting up the perfect scaffolding so the child can build themselves. You're the architect of the environment, not the boss of the student.
She actually mapped this self-construction process across specific planes of development. And if you're a parent or an educator, you've definitely seen these shifts firsthand. Early childhood is driven by this absorbent mind and sensory learning. They literally soak up the world around them like a sponge.
Then, by elementary age, this shifts dramatically toward imagination, moral reasoning, and what she beautifully called cosmic education, which is them understanding their place in the vast universe. Finally, adolescence brings a shift towards social identity, practical work, and making an actual societal contribution. Because the child changes so radically that educational scaffolding has to constantly adapt to support them.
At our final section, Section 4, Montessori, Reggio, and IB.
So, let's zoom out to the 21st century. How do Montessori's historical breakthroughs hold up against today's top educational frameworks? Well, before we contrast them, it's really vital to note their shared ground. All three of these modern systems, Montessori, Reggio Emilia, and the International Baccalaureate, share a core philosophy. They completely reject the old-school passive, rote, teacher-dominated models. Instead, they all universally view children as highly capable, active, and independent learners. That's the baseline we are working from.
But how they actually achieve this goal in practice, that looks very different. Montessori relies on a highly structured developmental pedagogy where the teacher acts primarily as an observing adult within a prepared environment. Reggio Emilia, on the other hand, is driven by social, creative meaning construction. It leverages democratic participation and project-based learning, with the teacher stepping in as a co-learner to foster deep relationships. And then you have the International Baccalaureate, or IB, which uses inquiry to facilitate global, transdisciplinary concepts with the teacher acting as a facilitator of international mindedness.
To break that down into practical, everyday classroom takeaways, Montessori leans heavily on fostering independence via very specific sequenced sensory materials that kids master at their own pace. Reggio Emilia focuses intensely on social expression, what they so beautifully call the 100 languages of children, and that's supported by incredibly rich visual documentation of their collaborative projects. And the IB framework? That prioritizes rigorous assessment combined with reflective, conceptual understanding across different disciplines. So it's really three distinct paths sharing one ultimate empowering goal.
So based on everything we've uncovered in this explainer today, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Which educational environment best aligns with your own view of a child's hidden potential? Whether you lean toward the structured, self-directed independence of Montessori, the creative, community-driven relationships of Reggio Emilia, or the transdisciplinary global inquiry of IB, the choice of how we unlock the capabilities of the next generation has literally never been more fascinating. Keep exploring.